Wish Tree, Chapter 47. Within an hour I was covered with the word stay. Extra wishes lay on the ground beneath me, piled like blossoms. Wishes made their way onto the porches, the railings, the sidewalk. After 216 rings, I thought I'd seen it all. Turns out you're never too old to be surprised. Soon it became clear that the stay wishes had been Stefan's idea. With the help of his teacher, Stefan's whole class had secretly worked much of the previous school day, making the index cards. Word spread quickly about the project. Before long, the whole school had joined in. So this was your idea? Samar asked Stefan. I had a lot of help, he said. It's a miracle we kept it a secret from you. Samara looked over at her parents. I don't know if this will change anything, she said. Stefan looked over at his parents. Me either. Thank you, though, Samar said, for trying. Stefan started to reply, but just then the timber terminator's truck pulled up. The end of my story was coming. Well, it had been a beautiful story. How lucky was I to have seen a day like today? But Stefan and Samar weren't giving up so easily. They ran straight to Francesca, who was busy untangling the kittens wound around her right leg. Please, Samar begged. You can see how much people love the wish tree. Please don't cut it down. Child, Francesca said firmly, it's time. Stefan pulled something from his jacket pocket. It was a small leather-bound journal. So you found it, said Francesca, in the shed? Yep, said Stefan, handing the worn diary to her. It's a little damp, said Francesca. Samar pressed the key, its long ribbon dangling, into Francesca's palm. You should read it. Maybe someday. How about now? Stefan urged. Francesca sighed. You children need a hobby, you know that? She put the key in the silver lock and the journal clicked open. The pages were yellow and the ink faded. Let me guess, it's about a tree that can talk. Actually, it's about this neighborhood, Stefan said. It's about us. Please, Samar said. Dear, it won't change anything, Francesca said. Please, Stefan said. Oh, fine, Francesca rolled her eyes. Gotta wait for the tree guys to finish getting set up. Sure, I'll glance it over. Maybe then you'll leave me in peace. Dragging Lewis and Clark behind her, Francesca went to Samar's porch, sat on the top step, and began to read. Chapter 48. It isn't easy cutting down a big tree. It takes careful planning and people who know what they're doing. I've seen neighboring trees cut down, and I knew how things went. While Sandy and Max moved to a safe distance, Stefan's parents watched from their porch and Samar's from theirs. Meanwhile, the tree people put ropes around my trunk and consulted with one another. A man and a woman carried over a huge chainsaw, followed by the stump grinder. The grinder looked a little like a hungry animal. Actually, it looked a lot like a hungry animal. All those critters gone? Dave called to Francesca. Haven't seen any, she answered. Dave climbed a ladder and peered into my hollows as well as he could. He didn't seem to notice Bongo, who was hiding deep in the owl's former home. I sat patiently awaiting my fate, while around me the world buzzed. A huge crowd, filled with old neighbors and new friends, had gathered, it seemed, to see me off. Near the curb, some kids were making music. I don't know if it was good music, but it was most definitely loud music. I realized it was the garage band Bongo liked. The whole thing was almost like a party, a going away party. There it was surrounding me, my wild and tangled and colorful garden. It wasn't such a bad way to leave the world, I decided. Not bad at all. Chapter 49. Dave had a megaphone, and through it he reminded the crowd to stay behind the barriers that had been erected. This is a big tree, folks, he said, and when it goes, we don't want anyone else going with it. Bongo, I said in a voice that only she could hear. You need to get to a safe place. You heard him. I'm a big tree. You don't want to be in the way when I fall. I'm not going anywhere, she replied in a stubborn whisper. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. But I'm staying with you, Red, and that's final. Dave turned to his workers. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Please, Bongo, I said, softly but urgently. The saw moved closer. I waited expectantly to hear the painful roar of the chainsaw engine. But instead, a small but intense sound filled the air. Something like a puppy growl mixed with a kitten hiss. It was a baby opossum. Darting through the huge crowd, across the muddy lawn past Dave and his crew, around the massive saw beneath the stump grinder, and finally triumphantly up my trunk was none other than Flashlight. He climbed straight through to his former hollow and settled there, his tiny head poking out. He was panting and trembling and hiccuping, but he did not seem to be in any danger whatsoever of fainting. "I missed you, Red," he said in a voice so small that only Bongo and I could hear it. "Hold off the saw!" Dave yelled. "Some animal just ran up the trunk." Bongo popped out of her hollow. "Flash," she hissed. "You can't be here. It's dangerous. They're about to—" "You know." "You're here," Flash pointed out. Across the grass streaked hairy spiders, with her other babies trailing. She went straight to the opossum hollow, where she proceeded to scold Flash as she snuggled him close. In the sky, little Harold suddenly appeared, frantically flapping his wings like a fuzzy butterfly. Agnes and the rest of her brood followed. They settled into their old home as if they'd never left. Bongo moved to home plate to make room for the owls. The ewes came next, trotting across the lawn. Last to join the group was the Skunk Family, who quickly scrambled up my trunk. 7 opossums, 4 raccoons, 5 owls, 6 skunks had waddled, scooted, dashed, and fluttered from their various homes just to see me off. My residents, my friends. The crowd was delighted. People applauded, they cheered, they laughed. Francesca, straining to get a hold, accidentally let go of the kitten's leashes, allowing Lewis and Clark to escape. They ran straight to me, clambering up my trunk to join the gang. It wasn't all perfection. The babies and parents were grumbling, but softly enough that none of the humans could hear. "Ouch!" muttered Hot Buttered Popcorn. "Your tail is in my mouth!" cried one of the ewes. "You smell like skunk," someone complained. "I am a skunk," came the reply. "Mom," asked Harold, "should I be afraid of a cat?" "As a rule, yes," said Agnes, "but this is a special circumstance." It took some effort, but eventually the entire group settled in together above the highest wishes. They gazed down calmly at the fascinated crowd below. One of the tree cutters took off his helmet and scratched his head. "This just don't happen," he said to Dave. "Those animals ought to be eating each other." "It's some kind of crazy critter miracle," said another worker. He pulled out his smartphone. "This is going on Facebook." Lots of other people seemed to have the same idea. Cameras clicked away, ignoring the barricades. The reporters dashed over, microphones extended as if they were hoping to interview the animals. Bongo, always a little bit of a ham, was happy to comply. "Chip, please," she said, to the microphone waving beneath her. Dave gestured helplessly at Francesca. "What is up with the menagerie lady? How are we supposed to cut this tree down?" Francesca, wiping away tears, stood. She put her arms around Stefan and Samar. Slowly they made their way across the muddy grass. When she reached me, she pulled a bookmark from Maeve's journal before handing the book to Stefan. It was a strip of cloth made of blue striped fabric, frayed and faded. Maeve's wish. Carefully, Francesca tied it to my lowest branch, already crowded with wishes. She stared long and hard at the animals. Lewis and Clark purred happily. The crowd quieted. The only sound was the rustling of my leaves. Finally, Francesca spoke. "Look, I don't do speeches. That's not my way." She patted my trunk. "But here's the thing. Until today, I'd almost forgotten how important this old tree is to my family story. And from the look of it," she pointed to my residence, "it's important to a few other families as well." Many people smiled. A few laughed. "I hate this word," Francesca continued, running her hand over my carved bark. "Hate it. My great-great-grandmother Maeve would have hated it just as much. Here in this neighborhood, we're better than this." She looked over at Samar's parents. "We don't threaten people here. We welcome them." Francesca reached for Samar's hand. "This tree is staying put, and I hope your family will too." Chapter 50. That night, many hours after the crowd had scattered, Samar slipped out the front door of the little blue house. Stefan, who'd been watching from his bedroom window, joined her moments later. They both sat silent beneath my branches. The silent breath of wind sent the index cards fluttering like huge moths. Moonlight was everywhere, it seemed, on the branches, on my branches, on the downy headed owlets, in the upturned gazes of Stefan and Samar. How beautiful we all were, bathed by the soft and silver light. Do you think your family will stay here? Stefan asked, after everything that's happened. I don't know, said Samar. I hope so. The breeze kicked up. Cards chattered, ribbons danced. A scrap of notebook paper, loosely tied with red yarn to my lowest branch, broke free. Samar snatched it as it swooped past. She squinted at the scribbled writing. Then she stood, carefully tying the paper back onto my branch. What was the wish for? Stefan asked. An invisible robot that does homework. Seems unlikely, Stefan said. True. Samar leaned against my trunk and smiled. But then, so does a talking tree. Chapter 51. If this were a fairy tale, I'd tell you there was something magical about that wishing day, that the world changed and we all lived happily ever after. But this is real life, and real life, like a good garden, is messy. Some things have changed, some things haven't. Still, optimist that I am, I'm feeling hopeful about the future. Samar's parents decided not to move, at least not for a while. Stefan and Samar have become good friends. Sometimes they will do their homework at the base of my trunk. Their parents still don't talk to each other. I'm not sure they ever will. The police never found the boy who carved leave into my trunk. But a couple of weeks ago I saw him sauntering by. I pointed him out to Bongo. Let's just say she made a very good large deposit that day. All my residents are back where they belong, safe in their hollows. They still argue sometimes, but they haven't eaten one another. Francesca applied to the city to make me a heritage tree. That means I'm protected forever. She's also on a first name basis with a local plumber who's learning to deal with my pushy roots. Lewis and Clark still haven't figured out how to walk on leashes. Bongo's made a new friend. His name is Harley Davidson. I suspect we may have a crow newbie in our future. As for me, I promised Bongo I will never be a Butsinski again. I told her that my meddling days are over. And yet here we are, you and I. What can I say? I'm more talkative than most trees. Still, if you find yourself standing near a particularly friendly looking tree on a particularly lucky feeling day, it can't hurt to listen up. Trees can't tell jokes, but we certainly tell stories. And that is the end of the book. Thank you, and please fill out the Schoology discussion.